we are more than our art.
Yes.
I think that's really key.
Yes.
At 12, I gave up. I was like, forget it. I'm done. And then that's when I fell in love with the piano.
Hello and welcome to the very first Create Like You podcast. My name is Kelsey Lee Cate, and on this show, I'm going to be having really fun conversations, candid coffee conversations with friends who are creatives in their industry, and I want to introduce them to you so that you can enjoy their story and also be inspired to create the way that you have been uniquely designed. So without further ado, let's get into the first interview.
My name is Kelsey Lee Cate, and I want to welcome you to the Create Like You podcast. And today I have the privilege of inviting a friend of mine that is a very gifted pianist, John Albert Thomas. How are you today, John?
Hi, Kelsey. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, so glad that you're with me. And, I would love to share a bit of an introduction for those listening that may have not heard of John's music yet. And so I'm just going to share a little bit of his story here. John Albert Thomas is on a mission to help artists thrive doing the work they love. He is an award-winning piano composer and a recording artist, entrepreneur, software developer, and business coach. In 2009, John began composing original music inspired by real people, which he calls music portraits. One such piece, called Sweet Resilience, won 2020 Single of the Year on Enlightened Piano Radio. Like many other artists, John has struggled for years to become self-sufficient with his art, but he's now on a quest to make that happen and to bring along with him as many artists as possible through innovative technology and business coaching. Besides music and business, John enjoys life with his wife and 4 children in their country farm, Peaches Place, just a stone's throw away from Memphis, Tennessee. There's so many cool elements of this in your bio that I'd love to ask you about, John. But first, I would love to know, what is a piece of advice that another artist or creative has given you, whether it's personally or something that you heard or read that has really inspired you in your creative walk?
Well, I have 2 things that come to mind. Can I share 2?
Please.
Okay. I have a friend who is a watercolor artist, very talented, and she's talented in so many other areas besides watercolor art. One of the things that she taught me was the importance of spending time every day, quiet, still, listening, and writing out the thoughts that God brings to your mind. So I'll sit in the morning with a blank sheet of paper and I'll ask God questions and I'll listen and I'll write the thoughts that he brings to mind. And it's very much a powerful experience because a lot of times I feel stuck. Like, okay, I have time, but how do I use my time? What's the next step? What should I do next? And so that's when the ideas come, is sitting with that blank sheet of paper, asking God for direction and listening. I'll have epiphanies and ideas and things, and that gives me that energy to go, okay, I know what to do next. Let me go do it. And the other piece of advice that kind of goes along with that is from my wife's Aunt June. And she is in her 70s. She has special needs. And every holiday we sit and basically I listen to her tell me same stories over and over, but she always has these little nuggets of wisdom that she's gleaned over the years. And one of the most recent times I was sitting with her, she said, there's one thing you can never get back: time. You can never get time back. You have to make the most of the time you have. God gives each of us our own talents, our own abilities. We must use them while we can. And so her creative thing is cross stitch, or was, and now she's got to the point where her hands she can't do it. And so I know that that's an ache of hers because that she brings that up periodically. And that brought so much fulfillment to her. But the walls are plastered with her cross stitch, and she's given cross stitch to people. And it's good to say, how do I use what time I have left in my life for not only for my own good, but for the good of others, right? How do I take my passions and my skills and my experiences and combine them all to make a difference in the world.
I love
And
that.
and so that's when, you sit down at the, beginning of the day or the end of the day, and that blank piece of paper, and you pray and you listen and you write down what God brings to mind. It's a beautiful thing.
Mm,
And then you go do it in obedience, I guess is the way you would say it.
mm,
Because it really does feel like God's calling you to do something, and you
mm,
go do it. And a mindset to get into, say, what's next?
mm. What's next? Wow. Well, before we ask you what's next, John, I would love to go back in your story just a bit and, or really as far back as you want to go. When did you first find music as a hobby or as a passion?
Well, we grew up with a little Baldwin piano that was later chipped with a little toy hammer. And when I was 4, my mom started to teach me piano lessons. She played piano, and she was our church pianist.
Mm,
And so she started to teach me piano lessons, and later she had me go and learn from other teachers. So I loved it and I hated it. I hated the practice. I hated the um, seeing what was on the page in front of me and just not being able to play it perfectly. It was so frustrating, and I could practice, and it never would be perfect.
mm.
So I tried guitar a couple of years, and that got boring for me. So I went back to piano, and then I finally gave up. At 12, I gave up. I was like, forget it. I'm done. And then that's when I fell in love with the piano.
Mm.
Because at age 12, I was started to make my own music. I found out I had a knack for coming up with a melody, and then I was trying to figure out, what do I do with the left hand?
Mm.
And so I tried to figure out what to do with the left hand, and before I knew it, I was playing some original compositions that were beautiful, and I started to work on that, and I just loved it. And then I saw George Winston created a cassette tape called
Ah,
December,
yeah.
and I listened to that over and over and said, someday I am going to release an album of
Wow.
original piano music. And so with that in mind, I wanted to go off to college and get a music degree. And that was, I actually did end up a long route, but I did end up with a music degree in theory and composition back, December of 95.
Where'd you go to school?
Samford University in Birmingham,
Wow. Awesome.
Alabama.
Wow. So then take us further. After you finished with your degree, what was next in your story?
Well, when I finished the degree, I also wanted to get married. And I thought, oh, how am I going to take care of a family? In my mind, I had this dream to be a musician, but I also had this belief that music was risky, and I really needed to go get a real job. And so I became an apprentice software developer for a family friend, and that started me down the path of software development. All the while inside, I was just feeling this angst for years, just feeling this angst. I'm a musician. What am I doing as a software developer? And just constantly frustrated with that fact. Always kind of looking at the life I wanted from the life I have to live in order to survive, take care of my family, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But in 2009, I took a leap of faith and a risk, and I left my day job to try to make it as a full-time musician for about 6 months, until my wife looked at me and said, go back to get a job, please. During that time period, social media was coming out. Twitter had come out not too long before that, and Facebook, and it was just, it was this new world. And I thought, man, if I can capitalize on those platforms, I could make a living from home in my closet. My office was literally in our bedroom master closet.
Wow.
And yeah, in this little corner with this little lamp and this square desk. and a little keyboard next to me, and I did everything wrong. I didn't plan this. I didn't, it was a leap. But it was very valuable, because in that process I began to ask the question, how do you make money? What is money? How do you make it?
Mm-hmm.
And that was a really important question. We tend to, as artists, we think about the music that we need to create something, release it, and then sell it. Hopefully we'll get our money back. But the answer to the question of how do you make money is serve people well.
Mm-hmm.
Serve people in a way that solves a need that they have, that they're willing to part money with in order to receive that, right? And so I thought, well, how does an artist make money creating music, not just selling it afterwards? Well, it has to be about others. It has to be, the creation process itself needs to be an act of service to other people. And that's where Music Portraits was born.
I was going to say, I feel like we're going to be getting to Music Portraits. That's awesome. Well, let's dive into it. Tell us about Music Portraits.
So Music Portraits is original music inspired by real people. And every musician I know does this to some extent, right? Somebody inspires them, they write a song about them, and it's just beautiful, and it means so much to them. It means so much to the person who inspired it. And it's usually just this one song, maybe the only song in their lifetime that they wrote about a specific person. And then other people do it frequently, but there's no real name for it. So I had to come up with a name for it. So I called it Music Portraits. And I offered a couple for free just to test it, to see if people liked the idea. And they loved it. They loved me sitting and listening to their story and helping them to feel heard and valuable and appreciated, and to take those emotions and thoughts and ideas to the piano and emote all of that into the music. And so that was the beginning of Music Portraits.
And what year was that?
That was 2009.
Okay, so that was the very
2009.
beginning of it. And I realized it's also important to jump back and just make sure that we discuss, and we'll talk about this again at the end of the show. But the music that you have available for folks to hear, tell us about that. What music is available online? How do they find it? Including Music Portraits, but not just limited to Music Portraits.
Sure. JohnAlbertThomas.com is where I have my music. And I have 6 albums out. The Golden Road was back right after college, and I had no idea what I was doing. There was no manual. I knew I wasn't going to get discovered, so I had to figure out, how do I release an album? So that was one of those things where I was like, okay, God, what's the next step? Because I really don't know what I'm doing. And it was just one step at a time. I even, finding a printer. This was before you had CD Baby or anything, or disc makers. And it was like back in 1998. And it was trying to figure out, okay, how do you do an album cover?
Wow.
On your own budget. I made that album. I recorded it, mastered it. It was $1,000. I had saved up $1,000, and I went into a studio and recorded it in a day. And it was all the savings I had.
Wow.
And that started it all. And then I learned that I could, release one song at a time back before it was cool to release singles. I did it one at a time because that's all I could afford. And I basically would try to do one song a month at the time. And that's when my second album came out.
And what's that called?
That one, originally I called it Piano Works Volume 2. And somebody said, that doesn't sell well. So I took one of the titles of one of the pieces, Daddy Daughter Dance. Oh. And I thought that really captures a lot, because I had just become a father not too long before that. And I just wanted to capture those moments and those thoughts. So Daddy Daughter Dance it was. And
Oh, tugs at the heartstrings for sure.
yeah, it does. It does. And that song was interesting that it hit a Spotify playlist at one point. When Game of Thrones came out, there was one character, this little girl who had a terrible relationship, I think, with her father. But that's one of the songs that they chose for their Spotify playlist. And
Wow.
and so all of a sudden that song took off. I was like, where did that come from?
Wow.
But
In our
yeah,
digital world that we live in today, that's very
absolutely.
interesting. It's a
That shows
real,
you the value of naming your songs well.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. And then your other continuing works before the music portraits, keep filling us in.
Yeah. So in 2009, when I had this crisis of I have to leave the corporate world and I have to go be a musician, one of the things I did was, okay, I need to get an album out fast. So I had basically composed enough pieces to create another album, and I created one called Zuzus Petals, which I love. It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart, and he's my favorite actor of all time. And
Hmm.
and I just love that scene where, with Zuzu and the pedals and how important life is. And I had, every time I play it, my little girls would get in their tutus and they'd dance around the carpet in the hallway.
Oh,
And it was just
sweet.
a beautiful thing. So I made that album about innocence and beauty. And so that's Zuzu's Petals. That's when that came out in 2009. I moved my piano for the release concert. I had hired somebody to move my piano to the church and did a little mini concert. And right after that is when I had to go back to corporate world because I
Uh,
used up the last of my savings. And but God has his mysterious ways. So I went back as a developer, and before long, I became a director of development and started to learn how to manage developers as
hmm.
well as write software. And God started me down this journey of leadership and teaching me all these different aspects of business. And that was really, I started to stick my nose into parts of business that I wasn't hired to do. And I tried to learn as much as I could on marketing and sales and just all these different areas.
Hmm.
And I helped that company grow considerably from a very small shop to something that a couple years after I left it, they'd sold the business for quite a bit. And
Congratulations. That's amazing.
yeah, it was
Wow.
it was very transforming for me,
Hmm.
uh, because when you think I'm supposed to be a musician, why can't I make a living doing music? And meanwhile, you're building all these skills along the way that you maybe don't appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's because God's got a plan for you,
Come
and it's a
on.
lot bigger. A lot of times, we are more than our art.
Yes.
I think that's really key
Yes.
for anybody who's an artist struggling to make a living. You are more than your art. Don't box yourself in. That's the mistake I made. Boxing
Mm-hmm.
myself in to think I'm a musician. I'm supposed to be a musician. Why am I not doing music full time? Right? Because I'm more than my art. I'm more than just an artist. God's giving me skills and passions and experiences that go far beyond just art. I would be selling myself short and not fulfilling my purpose in life if I just, you know, was successful in that one thing.
Yeah.
So learning how to how to run a business and grow a business. That's kind of my specialty, is to be able to grow something from very small, from one person shop all the way up to a mid-size
Hmm.
company. That's something that I do very well. And I learned to coach entrepreneurs and small businesses because I just love to watch them grow.
Hmm.
Now I'm at the point in life where I'm like, okay, well, what could I do the same thing with artists?
Hmm.
Like, how could I help artists who are trying to, who I know the struggle, right? I know the pain of wanting to be a full-time artist. Well, if I could take all the business knowledge and the entrepreneurial knowledge and with that pain, what can I do
Wow.
to help artists make a living and thrive, pulling together not only their art, but everything else that they're good at, everything else they love to do. Why
Mm-hmm.
not combine it to be kind of this unique package,
Yes.
right?
That's so good. You know what's fun is oftentimes I'm talking with amazing creatives and we just have coffee chats, and either it's in person or now through Zoom. Oftentimes I will say to my friend, I wish this was recorded. I wish, because other people need to hear this. And I'm so grateful that we are doing this conversation together and that now friends of mine can hear what you're saying, because absolutely, there is such power in figuring out who each of us are uniquely. What are the individual experiences that we've had, whether they're music related explicitly or not, that we have a very unique opportunity to meld those experiences together and create something that's absolutely unrepeatable, something completely unique that then gets to authentically bless other folks. And it's not a carbon copy of something else, because the best that we could ever be is a cheap knockoff of somebody else's brilliance. And so being
That's right.
who you are, being John Albert Thomas, figuring out how to connect this passion that you've always had for music, this liberated passion, I would say. It sounds like it really started at 12 when you were starting to make your own music. Of course, also built on what you learned as a music student. And I can identify with part of that as well. But then there's so much more that you bring to the table, and passions. And so that's something I just want to highlight as well as we continue here, that no matter what we're doing for our day job, and the reality is often as creatives in whatever industry, it can be very difficult to make a livable income from that. And that's always the phrase, the starving artist, the starving musician. But being able to understand that being an artist is not who I am, and it's not who John is, but it's a part of who John is.
That's right.
It's part of it. So thank you for sharing that. And would this be a good time to connect then with Music Portraits?
Sure. Yes.
Okay.
Right before I went back to the corporate world, I was trying to figure out ways to connect with photographers to license my music for their viewing sessions.
Mm-hmm.
So I had created a website for them to hear my music and see if they would license it. And I stumbled across an organization called Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. And what they have is a service of volunteer photographers who go to the hospital on a moment's notice to help families who just lost or are just about to lose their little one who's just born, and take a photo that they can have to remember. And as I was reading about what they were doing, I really felt like God was looking over my shoulder at the computer screen and saying, you need to do this for them.
Wow. Wow.
And it was, talk about a sense of calling. I reached out to them and I said, look, here's my idea. I want to offer 10 of these, 10 families where I can hear their story and I can help them remember their little one with original music. And so they said, yes, you have our permission to go on the forum and make that. So within a week to 2 weeks, I had 10 families eager for me to do original music for their little one. And so but I had to go back to the corporate world. But I still had that sense of calling. So for the next year and a half, I interviewed heartbreaking interviews with these families, just listening and valuing their little one. and writing their stories, taking all that information and writing a little story about each, and then composing a piece of music that really reflected the imagery, the thoughts, the emotions. Um, one I remember has a ceremony where they release balloons um, every year at the same day, and and so I wrote a piece called "Fly Away," and it was something that just meant so much. Each song meant something different to each family, and so that's when I created the album "Now I Sleep." And it's basically these piano lullabies that are inspired by these little ones. And so I cannot tell you how many CDs we've been able to give away to families who have lost a little one,
Oh my
who
goodness.
it just brings it brings healing in a way when words aren't enough,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because they can sit there and feel what they feel, and that piano music washes over them, and it's not words, but the Holy Spirit can minister to them in the deepest part of their hearts, where the pain is, and bring healing. So um, that is beautiful, a beautiful way that you know again, getting quiet with God, listening to Him. What's next? And then this was next, and so I did that, and it was a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
After that, that was 2011. I released that album. After that, it wasn't until 2015 that I released a Christmas album because I wanted to do that. I was like, I need to do more music portraits. Those give me such satisfaction, and they do so much to help others. So I put it out there. I said, uh, I want you folks to nominate people for my next set of music portraits. And so I got a bunch of stories,
Oh wow.
and I had one story that was so deeply moving, and it was actually a friend of mine, and she had submitted it under a pseudonym, so no special favors, you know. And it
Mm-hmm.
was so deeply moving. I had no idea this was her story,
Wow.
and I chose it, and I composed a piece for her. It was called "Light of Dawn." Uh, Her middle name is Dawn, and so I composed that piece, and she said when she got it, she listened to it 100 times, and it was after about 100 times of listening to her song, she would just hold the phone to her chest and listen to it over and over again. She began to feel love for the first time.
Hmm.
It was where she felt the feeling of being loved. That was a part of her life that had been blocked off because of years of abuse in her childhood, and and over the next 2-3 years, we stayed in touch quite regularly. We still talk, and just the transformation that God used the music to bring healing to her heart,
Mm-hmm.
to help her feel love, to help her uh, overcome so much. She got off of medications. She got physically much healthier,
Wow.
and it was just a complete transformation.
Wow.
And it
Amazing.
and it showed me that the power of worth, the power of when somebody is willing to listen to their story and to value them for who they are. The thing that I'm trying to convey is that you are priceless. God sees you as priceless, and we don't believe that about ourselves.
Mm.
But you're His creation, and He loves you more than you can possibly imagine. You're worth more to Him than you possibly can imagine. And so
Amen.
being able to create this music helps speak to them in a way that words can't. They've heard words all their life, but music can get deep into the heart where words can't.
Yeah.
And with that message, and it's just
Yeah.
a very healing thing.
John, well, we can add to this. You're a music therapist as well. Honorary music therapist. Thank you so much for sharing that. What a blessing. What might you say to someone listening who says, you know, John, I love what you're talking about, but I feel stuck. I don't feel like my music would be good enough, or I don't feel like my painting, or I want to start a catering business or a wedding planning business, but I don't have enough experience, or there's fill in the blank. I'm not blank enough.
Yeah.
And there's this reality of a need to level up in some way to get there,
Mhm.
but that fear is so blocking someone that they can't get past it. What would you say?
I resonate with that question so much because I still struggle with that mindset, and
Mm,
it is mindset. I'm listening to I'm listening to a book by an ultra marathon runner, David Goggins, and he was talking about this 40% rule, that we have this governor inside of us that likes to quit at 40%. It likes to reserve 60%. So we're capable of so much more than we give ourselves credit for. The other thing is that every person that you see is successful out there started where you started. They did their thing for the first time. They didn't know what they were doing. They had to learn. They had to fail, practice, fail, practice, fail, practice, fail, practice, succeed. If you don't fail, you won't learn and grow, and it's okay. We're risk avoidance, right?
mm,
If I fail, it's the end of the world. But I bet you 90% of the people out there, if you fail, you're going to make it right.
mm,
Right? If you let somebody down, you're going to make it right. So don't be so hard on yourself. Try. When you learn how to ride a bike, right? How many times did you fail before you finally got it? Now, maybe there's some people that got it the first try. Good for
nope.
them. But I bet there's something else in their life that they had to try a few times, right? How many times do you have to practice the scales on a piano before you finally get your fingers right and you can do it well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
don't be afraid of the failure. It is mindset. You are capable of so much more than you think. So don't let that hold you back.
Beautiful. Thank you, John. And I want to ask you another fun question that I hope also inspires folks to just keep thinking outside the box as well, is what do you do outside of music and outside of business, what you consider right now your day job, um, that fulfills you, that brings you joy and energy and inspires you in your music?
Well, that's a good question. We live okay for years we lived in subdivisions and we always wanted to live out in the country. We had this uh here's another gold nugget. Um this really transformed us, our family, and a vision of what's possible. Years ago we sat, and my wife and I sat, and we said, okay, what would happen if we came into possession of $100 million? Okay, we paid all of our debts, house is paid for, we have you know we have enough money for the rest of our lives, we can do anything we want with the time that we have. What would we do?
Hmm.
Well, and so we started to dream and envision what that life might look like. And after giving all the money we wanted away and we still have money left over, what does that look like? Well, we wanted to live in the country. We wanted to create a place where people could come and be restored and rest, where music is a key part of that restoration, and where creativity of all kinds is appreciated, where nature is nourishing.
Hmm.
And so we with this vision in mind, when you voice that vision of kind of where you think you want to go, it's amazing how the life's little decisions along the way kind of steer you towards that, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Making that happen. And so this land became available. It had a barn on it. And this place we call Peach's Place now. And Peach's Place, we got the name because my wife's parents had torn down the peach trees in order to build an addition to take care of um, Becky's grandmother. and grandfather.
Mm.
And so, and that place then, after they passed, was used to help launch people into careers and marriages and missionaries, and it was used a place to
Wow.
launch people, right?
Wow.
So when we moved here, we decided to name it Peach's Place because we wanted to carry on that sense of mission, that sense of purpose. And so we
Beautiful.
have this little farm, and we have lots of chickens. They're growing. We have getting more chickens. I have pressure right now to get goats. They're not here, but I can only envision that day is coming. And so Peach's Place is this place in the country. We built this house. It already had the barn. My wife does custom hand painted signs and home decor. She does a beautiful job, and so she's got plenty of room to be able to build her sign business. And then we cut a walking trail through the woods. It's about 10 acres. We cut a walking trail around the perimeter of the woods so we could enjoy nature. And we have
Neat.
envisioned, in the future, maybe having little cabins in the woods where authors or, people who need to get away for some solitude and time of reflection and time of healing and
Oh, how cool.
restoration. So we got pictures in our minds of what this thing could turn into. We'll see.
That's actually first how I connected with you. Was I saw an invitation on Facebook to Peach's Place, and I thought, what is that? And I was familiar with your name through Whisperings Piano Radio. We're both artists there on the broadcast, and so I was familiar that you're a pianist. But when I clicked on this Facebook group, I stumbled upon a picture of Becky, your wife, with your dog, I think, and it was just a really sweet picture that was a totally different look about your family from a different vantage point than music. And I really connected with how you were sharing. I just started scrolling and I just looking at all these posts about chickens and about farming. It wasn't farming. It was I think she was doing an herb planter, and just the way that she was sharing some of her thought process behind growing. And anyway, I fell in love with Peach's Place. And so then I sent you a message and I said, hey, my name is Kelsey. We haven't met, but I just want you to know how touched I was by your Facebook group and what you're doing and how you are reaching out to people. And I just want you to know that. And I wanted to talk with you because I knew that there'd be a story there. And I read the description that you had about where that name Peach's Place came from. And so that's pretty cool. That's a way to share how we met, or more connected besides just being friends on Facebook. And so if people want to experience that Facebook group as well, how can they find that?
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad that you joined our group. It's on Facebook. If you search for Peach's Place Living, it will come up as a Facebook group, and it's a private group. Becky and I and the kid, or Becky and I, are the only ones that post into it, but it's really sharing our lives, sharing our adventures of building this place. It's kind of watching life in progress, but it's really filled with encouragement. We wanted a positive oasis from all the rest of what goes on Facebook.
Yes, well, I experienced that. It was powerful enough for me to reach out through social media, and now we're having this chat today. So
Wonderful.
Thank you for having that that avenue available to have people meet you and to meet Becky. And I look forward to having Becky come and share her story on a future episode too.
Oh, she would love that. Dream big. Dream big. What is your $100 million dream?
Love it.
Write down, spend some time writing that out, and then share it with somebody, because once you start to share it with people, it's amazing what happens. And it took us 10 to 20 years for this dream to evolve into an actual reality.
Yeah,
So
wow.
Start now, and who knows, over the next 10, 20 years, things will start falling into place.
Beautiful. And before we close here, I just want to add to this conversation by saying also, if there's someone on the other side of this hearing and still feeling stuck and still not sure, the worst critic is the one inside our head, holding an expectation of what it should look like. And the problem with that is that the idea of what we think should happen and maybe the level of achievement we should get by a certain point is the only way. And if we don't meet that, or if we don't fail forward, that there's that it's not good enough, and so why bother starting? And so get messy. I used to listen to or watch the Magic School Bus as a kid. Miss Frizzle, and she'd say, "Get messy, make mistakes," whatever it was. And then she'd jump in the bus with her frizzy hair and crazy, and they'd go on adventures, and they would discover things. And that is what our artist journeys can really look like. Don't you agree that it's messy? Most of it doesn't look like what we think it will in the outset. Often it's better. And it's always his plan. And I really believe that with what your stories so far of what you've done and how you've helped people is just the tip of the iceberg. And I'm so excited to continue hearing more of your story. And would you take us home and let us know what's next for you?
Well, I'm excited to get more into coaching artists, to take the business knowledge I have that I serve entrepreneurs in my day job to help them launch digital products like mobile apps and things like that. I want to be able to take that knowledge and help artists, build their businesses, these artistpreneurs, and really help them to find a way to make a living, to do what they love to do.
Wonderful.
And so hopefully in the future, also I have envisioned a digital platform, online platform, to be able to take music portraits and make that mainstream, something that artists can easily plug into, and where people can easily provide music portraits or commissioned art as gifts for people.
Beautiful.
So that's something that I'm beginning the process of building now, and we'll see where that goes.
Wow. Well, it's been such an honor and so much fun to chat with you, John. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing your encouragement with my friends listening as well. And if there's somebody who would love some professional guidance, how can they also connect with you if they're interested in learning more about how you coach?
Sure. They can just email me, john@johnalbertthomas.com.
Great. Awesome. And I will put the links to John's website and to his consulting down in the comments, or if you're listening on Spotify or any of the podcasting platforms, I will put those links in the show notes for you. And again, listening audience, my friends, I just want to say thank you so much for hanging out with us. Thanks for letting me introduce you to my friend John. And please remember that you are a unique, unrepeatable soul. And I hope that you kick fear in the face and that you do something today that you didn't do yesterday. And with that, we look forward to seeing you next time. And John, hey, maybe we should have another conversation sometime and just specifically talk about music business. Maybe in the future.
I would love to. That sounds great.
Great.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
You know what today's dad joke is?
What?
What tone does a piano falling down a mine shaft make?
An A flat minor?
Yes.
I've heard that one before. I can't claim
Yes,
that I
that's
thought of
today's
it.
dad joke. I thought it was appropriate.